So, everybody, wow, we've got a nice big crowd today. So, I'm just going to zoom this around so everybody can say hello if you want to say hello. And all the way, 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 all the way. Oh, look. Hi. So, this is Utah Node.js, and today we've got Paul Millham presenting. For those of you that are on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, if at any point you find this to be useful, please go ahead and give it a big fat thumbs up. If otherwise, give it a thumbs down because every thumb helps. And there should be a link in the doobly-doo to Utah Node.js if you want to subscribe. Otherwise, just check out, do the Google searches for Utah Node.js and you'll find it. And with that, Paul, why don't you take it away for us?
Hey, I'm Paul Millham. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm presenting on Fastify, and I have a couple of disclaimers before we start. First, when I write slides late at night, I had really dumb stuff in there to keep myself entertained. Most of those things persisted into the final presentation, so if you enjoy them, that's good. Okay, second, I still think of myself as a developer, but I've been off that track for a little bit. So if you see something wrong, just be nice. Just keep it now. You can correct me if I say something wrong. Okay, and third, this is a volunteer thing, so I animated like every element of this presentation, and nobody can stop me. So we're gonna get going. Okay, so we're talking about Fastify. Okay, bam, did you see that? Okay, so who is this guy? All right, so here's a photo of me, if you haven't seen me. This is back when I was full of life. That's my name, Paul Millham. And, I forgot to say, there is a picture of cheese on every slide. So if you see them all, you get a prize. It's a slice of pizza. Okay, so you can hit me on Twitter, @DomRain. Okay, I'm hiring, so I have a lot of positions open. And if you want one of those positions, please come talk to me. I'll be here hanging out. Front end, React Native, full stack, Node.js backend. Okay, so what's Fastify? Okay, so this is going to be some kind of obvious stuff, but Fastify is a Node.js web server framework, or a lot of those, but it's also written in JavaScript, which is unusual for a Node application. One of the things that's kind of cool about it is it's fast, and they have the benchmarks to really show how fast it is. If you go to the site, go to the documentation, you'll see they have it all benchmarked out and everything, of the contrived benchmarks they performed. It is the fastest, and so, I don't know, it's always nice to be fast. Okay, so this is one thing that's really cool that I like about it. Fastify just comes with a lot of stuff that you would want. I like Express, and Express is good, but Express does not, right? So that's one of the things we're going to focus on here. So
it hasn't been updated in over 5 years, so there's that.
So Fastify, yeah, just a lot of stuff that you would be like, oh, I need this middleware, I got to install this plugin, whatever. A lot of that stuff you're just going to get out of the box with Fastify, which is great. And also, it's full of cheese. Okay, so now if you go to the website, Fastify has a couple like core features or guiding principles that the maintainers espouse. So we'll run over those really quick. So highly performant. Basically all of the choices they've made in Fastify for like the underlying libraries, all of that stuff, they've chosen a lot of them because they're fast. They're also good in a lot of other ways, but performance is always on the mind of the maintainers. So extensibility is another big thing. You'll be able to see that through like the plugin architecture, the hooks, decorators, all of those kind of things. They also say it's schema based, and what they mean here is Fastify validates data coming in using JSON schema, and then it serializes all of your replies on the way out. And this is really cool, so I'm going to spend some time talking about this later. Okay, but that's what they mean by schema based. Okay, data in, out, validated by schemas. Okay, so they also have logging in here. I don't know why they put that as a core feature, but basically the logging is very lightweight. And so I guess the theory here is people avoid logging because it's performance heavy. Developer heavy, developer friendly, so it definitely is. I like it, I like working with it, and you can see this through the documentation as well. Really good documentation, though if you go exploring the documentation, you'll see it's written by people whose first language is not English, so you can you'll see typos and things like that every once in a while, but developer friendly and TypeScript ready. So I was kind of joking about JavaScript before. It is written in JavaScript, but they maintain really good def files. So you get all the autocomplete and everything that you've come to expect. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? So any good getting started guide, right, or intro to X framework is going to have a quick start. So we'll cover that. I'm going to walk through the request lifecycle. So this is actually really cool. There's a well-defined request lifecycle, reply cycle. So you can see every step through the framework. What's happening to your data, what's happening to your request, and more importantly, there's hooks into all those pieces, which is super nice. Okay, validation, talked about that a little bit before, we'll cover that. Lightly touch on async await support, and then I want to talk about the ecosystem. Okay, so the quick start. So if you're familiar with Express.js, this is instantly going to look pretty familiar, right? So we've got some I don't know, basic stuff here. The bare bones server, like I said, right? This is a hello world. But, we instantiate Fastify, we declare a route, and one thing about this is you can see they added some of the helper methods that Express exposes as well, right? So you have a .get, and that allows you to define a get route. You don't have to do it this way, and in fact, I would recommend you don't do it this way, but if you're used to Express, this is just a really easy way to do it. And then, so you set up your route, you tell it to listen, and then you go, right? So this would run, you could hit it, and, get this hello world JSON back. Okay, like I said, it also has async await out of the box, which is really nice. So, it is actually a couple lines longer, but I think it's much more intuitive to just return something from a function than actually pass a value to a callback. So you can see that that's just supported right out of the box. There's no plugins, nothing like that, right? So just an async function, and it just works. I didn't have to call next, anything like that, okay? Okay, so Fastify, you can add routes using the convenience methods that I showed earlier, but this is actually, I think this is a better way to do it. So if you've used Happy or something like that, this might look a little more familiar to you. But I can just pass this object in, right? And then it has these certain properties on it, and I can use those. I'm gonna stand up and point to things for a second. So a lot of this is self-explanatory, but it's really nice. So like I've got my method up here, my URL, those are obvious, but then I've got my schema object in here. And so a couple of things to point out is there are different pieces of the schema, right? And so I talked earlier that validates coming in, serializes going out, right? And there's a lot of advantages to that, and I'll talk about that later, but I have my query string, and my schema validators, they're just JSON, right? And that's the cool thing about JSON. Well, I guess technically this is a JSON, but they're just POJOs right here, right? And so then I have my response, and my response is actually serialized on the way out by HTTP response code. Right? So that's really cool as well. This is an example of a hook here, the pre-handler. So we'll talk about hooks more in a minute, but you can just define any hooks you want for this specific route. And then this is like where the business happens, so down in the handler. I like defining them like this, like an object. It makes testing a lot easier. I find it really easy to read. So there's a lot of advantages to doing it this way. Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, so Fastify has a well-defined request lifecycle with common sense hooks. Boom, I said that. Okay, good. Because it's true. Okay, so we'll talk about it a little bit more. So this, sorry AJ, I'm gonna keep making you move the camera. This thing is amazing though, right? Like, so I don't know. It might just be because I'm not especially smart, but like I would get into an Express application and I'd just be like, what the heck is happening at this point to my request? Okay, like I didn't necessarily know in what order the middlewares were being added or anything. So this is really nice, one, because it's just in the documentation. Like, it's super clear. Like, my request goes through these phases, and then I send that sucker out, right? And along with that, you'll notice, like, at all these vital steps, right, there are hooks, okay? So, like, my data validation happens here, which is really obvious because it says validation, right? So if I wanted to do something before the data validation happens, there's a hook for that, right? And so I'll show you how to add hooks in a second, but I just add a hook, do my thing, and it moves on. And I don't have to, like, look through all my middleware and find out where I need to inject this hook or something like that. That, like, is really easy. I just add a pre-validation hook. So there's other nice stuff too, like, you know, pre-serialization or on-send. These ones, the names are a little funny, right? On-send versus on-response. But so on-send, if you want to manipulate the response before you send it out, you can do that. So that's what that is. On-response is after it's sent. So that's like, I don't know, you do metrics or something like that. Or just if you want every single request that comes in on request, you can use that hook as well. That's really nice. I've used that to, like, you know, attach IDs to requests or things like that. But it's just super simple, straightforward, and you don't have to, like, wonder about what's going on. It's all well defined. So this is just a list of, like, the request and reply hooks. So a couple we didn't see on there are on error, on timeout, but these are, I don't know, like that quote I made up. It's just, they're just common sense and they're useful. That's what I really like about it. And adding a hook is super basic and easy as well. So this is going to be a global level hook that on every single request it's going to run this code. Again, you can see it supports Async Await, which is really nice. And I didn't have to do anything funny like with my middleware. I didn't have to understand, like, res next. I didn't have to, like, forget to call next and destroy my server. Like, you can just use an async method and it works, which is pretty nice. Okay, what's on this one? Okay, all right. So request validation and reply. I think I got every animation in Keynote in here. Not the transitions for the slides, but bouncing things around. Okay, so request validation. So like I said before, based on JSON schema, so this is kind of a thing for me, right? Validating your data. Express is amazing because there's no validation by default and everyone uses it. So that's great. So you should be validating your data. And I don't mean like throwing a parse int, right, in your handler. So everything coming into your application, you should know what it is. For sure, you should know what it is. Okay, it should fit within a predefined range of expected values. If you don't do that, I can promise you, you're going to run into security. You're going to run into stability issues. So anyway, I'm not saying anyone's stupid, but don't be stupid. Okay, validate your data. You should be doing this all over your code, actually, but especially at your API boundaries. Okay. Okay, so now reply serialization. So these two are separate, right? So the validation is coming in, the reply is on the way out, and they behave a little bit differently, and I'll explain that in a second. So did you guys see that burning animation?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this also uses JSON schema. And that's nice because even though they're separate libraries that handle the validation and the serialization, they share schemas. So they're both JSON schema compliant. It's just a standard. It's not something like, you know, the Fastify guys made up or anything like that. So then the thing that's nice about this is it's just a standard. It's not even like node specific, right? Like I like Joy, and I think Joy is good. And there are lots of other validators out there, but they're not a standard, so you're not going to get like the tooling ecosystem that comes with it. So anyway, JSON schema. Now in Fastify, the thing that does the validation is AJV, and the thing that does the serialization is this library that they did write called FastJSON Stringify. So that tripped me up a couple of times. So if you do that, they're both JSON schema compliant. At least as of Fastify version 2, I did notice some differences in behavior if you start getting into more complex schemas though. So just maybe be aware of that. So we already covered that. It shares the schemas with the request validator, and it's also fast. I'm not smart enough to understand why it's actually faster to have predefined serialization schemas, but they say it is. Okay, so
It can be JIT optimized.
well, there you go. This is the thing that I love about it, though. Okay, so a lot of people don't validate at all, but then if you do get validation coming in, a lot of the times there's not validation going out. Okay, and some people might raise their eyebrows and be like, "That's stupid." It's actually not. So it's really important that your API returns what you think is going to return. So for security purposes, like let's just say you had an injection attack or something like that, and somebody, hopefully you don't have MySQL injection vulnerabilities in your app, but just say you do, and then the attackers loaded all of this information up into memory. This is another layer that's going to prevent any of that from being disclosed, right? So it's going to get to your serialization layer. It's not going to match what Fastify thinks should be heading out, and it'll just block it. It's going to fail the request. So that's really cool. And the other thing is it's just really nice to have an enforced contract for what you're actually returning. I mean, you guys can put whatever you want in the Swagger docs, I guess, right? But I've seen plenty of APIs that you get surprises on the returns, right? And that's not a desirable application feature. So with these schemas in the front and the back, you know exactly what's going in, you know exactly what's going out. Okay, so just some examples. If you're already used to JSON schema, it's pretty. I guess even if you're not, it's pretty straightforward, right? So Fastify has this top-level method that you can use called add schema, and this is going to be shared, like I said, between the validators, between the serializers. So really, just give it a name. This is JSON schema, you tell us an object, and then what's in there, right? So I've got a property hello, and it's a string. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And Joy is really popular. You're probably used to that, and you can do lots of things. Like you can say it's optional, it's required. You can say like add regex. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. You can tack it on there and chain it all together, right? And so these get more confusing. I don't think they're as easy to read as Joy is personally. But anyway, so you define this, and then just in your route, you go ahead and you can just reference the schemas that go in, right? And so I think this is kind of nonsense. I don't know why you have the same schema for the body and the headers, but I think it's just to illustrate that you can share these, right? So let's check out this other thing. Okay, now on the replies, you have the same thing going on. So you can see that there's some kind of cool matching going on here, right? So when we're serializing data on the way out, we're going to match two different schemas. Okay, so if it's a 201 reply, we've got a value, which is a string. But then if it's any other 200, we're also going to have this other value, which is a Boolean. So again, this is really nice that it's very, very plain on what your API is returning. It's enforced by code, so you're not going to get surprises. And you can even do things like, there's plugins to auto-generate your Swagger docs and stuff like that off of it. Okay, what did I put in here? Okay, what if I'm a whiny baby that doesn't like writing my validation schemas in JSON? Okay, that's a valid point, Mr. Joy user. Okay, so, well, I guess first point, don't be a whiny baby, okay? But maybe more seriously, what we've got is the Fastify authors, I guess, they've had a lot of whiny babies around, I don't know. But anyway, they've added this in version 3. So it's this new module they've created, Fluent JSON Schema. It's not specific to Fastify, it works independently of Fastify, but the maintainers did write it. And so, this is Joy looking. Right, not exactly, but it's very similar to how Joy looks, right? But what this is going to do is it's actually going to generate your JSON schema for you. So you can still get what I think is a nicer syntax. It's a little easier to read. You still get the chaining that you're used to, which is nice as well, because this is a little more complex one right here, right? So I've got this array, it can have at most 3 items, and then what are the items? They're integers, this array is required, right? So it's a little easier to read. Okay. Okay, all right, so let's talk about native async await support really quick. So a couple of nice things about this, I guess it's stuff I've already said basically, but no plugins, which is nice. It just works. And so, I don't know, I grew up in the era of callbacks, so I'm used to them, but I mean, like, it just makes a lot more sense to just return a value instead of passing a value into a function at the end of your at the end of your function. And you don't have weird stuff happening, like you call the callback twice, or I don't know. I'm a big fan of async await. Okay, 100% ecosystem. Okay, I can't remember why I put the 100% on there. Like I said, it was getting kind of late, but so Fastify IO, if you go here, the docs are actually really good. Okay, they have like common use cases. They'll explain everything, any questions. One of the things that's really nice about it is the authors have, in that ecosystem I just linked, they have these core plugins. So you can see there's a lot of these, right? We only get down to C here. But they publish all of these modules, and they call them core plugins because these are supported by the maintainers. So they're kept up to date, they're always in sync with the latest Fastify versions. And they have a lot of them too, right? So, I don't know, there's good stuff in here like Helmet and stuff, just stuff you probably always want to use. Like you don't have to look for some shifty third-party module that has like 1 star in GitHub, right? So they have all of this stuff in here, and it's really good. The other thing that's nice about it is it's actually an OpenJS Foundation project. So these projects come with, I would say, some level of support, guarantee that they're going to be around in the future. So if you don't know about the OpenJS Foundation, I don't know, go read about it, it's important. But they have, like Node.js, Electron, things like that are OpenJS Foundation projects. And so you can see other popular ones like Mocha, but Fastify is on here. NVM, like these things are going to be around. Like Fastify is not like a little fly-by-night thing that's going to go away. So there's more stuff that I didn't cover. I mentioned the docs, but they're good. Like you can go and find answers to stuff that you want to learn about there, which is what docs are supposed to do. They support decorators, encapsulation. You can actually just drop in Express middleware if you want as well, which is kind of cool. So they added that in V3. It has native support for testing. And this is a big one in my book. So they actually have a support schedule, right? Which is amazing. So like I can look at my version of Fastify and know how long it's going to get security fixes and things like that. Okay, so that's basically it. That's me again. Nice. Okay, so yeah, if you want to talk to me on Twitter, that's fine, but it's mostly like silly stuff I post on Twitter. So anyway, I am Paul Millham on LinkedIn, and also in real life, I am Paul Millham. And I'm hiring, so reach out. If I don't make these hires, they're going to kill me. So no, that's it. That's all that I've got. Okay.
Q&A.
Cool.
Cut. Oh yeah, I can
So I
answer
imagine
questions.
there's like a timeout, like if one of your async waits never resolves, it just timeout after like 30 seconds. Is that like the default or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember what the default is right now, but yeah, and like we saw earlier, there was also a timeout hook. Yeah.
Has the performance improvement been noticeable to you?
For the projects I've used it on now.
I feel like Express is fast enough.
So it's fine. So I mean, their benchmarks measure like the performance overhead of the framework itself. In practice, I don't know how much of a difference you're going to see between Fastify and Express. In the applications that I've written where I am now, it just wasn't like performance intensive. But it is always good to have a performant framework,
Sure.
right? So I don't know, your mileage may vary, but they do take it seriously, and they also take performance testing seriously. Like they have a whole section on performance testing on their website.
So when it comes to learning Fastify, because I'm pretty new to it, what is the biggest mistake that new developers make when coming to this technology?
I don't know. The biggest mistake I made was JSON schema can just be terrible sometimes. I hated it for like a month of my life. But anyway, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for that.
I know that at least a pattern I've seen in Express is like to nest the routers.
Uh-huh.
So you have like, and for often they'll match the app itself.
Right.
Is that something you do, or is everything top level?
So you can do it both ways, and one of the bullet points I had on there was encapsulation, and so you can go onto their docs and you can see a whole diagram of how that all works, because you might want to do something like that. I don't like that pattern, so I can't get too deep into it and how it behaves for Fastify. But you're right, that is really common, and you can do it in Fastify as well, if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's no reason to use Express.
That's correct. That's what I was.
Okay.
So, it is just a nice framework. I know Express is kind of the default, but this really does come with a lot of stuff that you'll just want anyway. So it's a good framework.
Well, the thing that I have against Express is one thing. It doesn't have a maintainer.
Yeah.
The thing that I like about Express is one thing. Everybody uses it, and it's impossible to convince them to switch to something same.
Right, yeah. I haven't kept up with it. I thought Doug Wilson was still working on it, but I don't know. The updates
Working
are...
on, I think, means the occasional bug fix. There's the
Yeah.
docs have, for 5 years, the docs have said, the docs have been for Express 5.x,
Yeah.
and they mismatch with the version that's published, which is 4.x. It's never...
So I agree. This is really actively maintained. I forget the guy's name, but gosh, I shouldn't ad lib. Anyway, the people that created this application are Node.js performance experts. They're prolific open source contributors, and so I think it has a really bright future. And you can see that they're really active by their participation in the OpenJS Foundation. So anyway, I think it's a good bet.
Yeah. Well, what would you say if someone's in the position of trying? So, for example, all the boot camps are teaching Express. Everybody puts on what they're looking for to hire Express. How do you, either as somebody that's learned Fastify, how do you market yourself so that you show that you have the more important knowledge, and as an employer, how do you get people onto the Fastify bus?
So that's a really interesting question. I do hiring myself, and I list Express as a required framework knowledge, and I'll quiz people in interviews on Express because it's so prolific. I think you could probably ask this about any technology, right? You're like, I'm a developer, I've learned this cool new thing, it's better than what everyone else is using. But I don't know that's going to change the interview process or anything like that. You probably still need to learn Express if you're working in Node. But when you're in the company, like the people that manage you, the people that lead you are going to trust your technical insights, right? And so that'd be the time that you could talk to them and explain the benefits of using another framework.
So in terms of compatibility, how drop-in is Fastify? If I have an Express app, can I drop in Fastify, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't try to do that. So they do advertise that you have drop-in middleware, but I don't think you can just take your code and then change require Express to require Fastify.
Does it have rec.ip, rec.
Yeah. So
set status, that kind of thing. Set header.
There is a lot of
conditions now?
compatibility with the different properties. I'm not sure on those exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, they did add a lot of convenient stuff for people onboarding from Express, so it's a pretty easy journey.
Have you used their logging?
Yeah, so their logging is just a third-party library called Pino, and it's just a really lightweight logger.
You like it?
It logs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So I've never felt like it's gotten in the way, so it seems good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, any other questions?
Kind of have one, sort of. So, I actually teach software development, and so with my students, of course, they're learning Express, right?
Right.
Should I try and get them introduced into Fastify? Would that still give them the same tools if you went in an interview? If they went in an interview, right, and you
Mhm.
started asking questions about Express, can they relate the two, or would it be better for them to first spend their core focus on Express and then adopt Fastify?
Yeah, Express is just so prolific. I mean, it's subjective, but I would say it's time well spent learning it, and they're going to go into interviews and need to learn some Express-specific stuff. So I think that's a good use of their time.
Okay.
When they grow up, they can learn Fastify. But I mean, at that phase, you really want to focus on making sure they're compatible with what people are going to be asking them, right? So,
Wait, when they grow up, wouldn't they be using Go?
nice. Oh, I'm not answering that question. I love JavaScript. I don't know if it's Stockholm Syndrome, but I just love the language.
Oh, I love JavaScript too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here. Anyway.
We're good? Okay.
All right, well, let's have one more round of applause. And just go around the room, and we won't catch everybody clapping. All right, so we'll switch hot seats, and we'll be back. So for those of you that are online, we'll be back in just 5 minutes or less. But if you like this, if it was useful at all, go ahead and give it a like. We'll get that contact information into the doobly-doo so that you can reach out to Paul if you want to throw tomatoes and harass him. And, and give a thumbs down if you really just didn't like the guy, because every thumb helps. And hit the subscribe and the whatchamajigs and all the, you know the deal. Adios.